Well, you can't win them all, and Michigan State found that out the hard way today as they fell to the University of Michigan 75-64 here at Madison Square Garden in the Big Ten tournament semifinals. Ryan, Michigan was just the better team today.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good way to put it. And Michigan State had a 29-26 lead at the half, but Michigan, they started out hot in the second half with a 10-2 run early, and they didn't relinquish the lead the rest of the way, and that was the difference, was that run. And Mo Wagner hit 3 shots in that stretch after going 0 for 7 in the first half. We saw him tear up Michigan State in East Lansing earlier this season. He's obviously the guy that gives Michigan State fits and is a matchup problem. And that run is really what sealed the deal for Michigan State.
You mentioned Mo Wagner. He only had 1 point in the first half. 1, and that came from the free throw line. He did not even make a single field goal in the first half. And in the January 13th matchup in East Lansing, he had a season-high 27 points. So you're coming in with the scouting report of Tom Izzo, and you're thinking, all right, Mo Wagner's going to run rampant on this Michigan State defense. And in the first half, that didn't happen. Second half, a little bit of a different story.
Well, it was. And, I mean, the entire game, Nick Ward looked like he didn't want anything to do with Mo Wagner, and he didn't play much at all.
No.
They were really playing Jaren Jackson on him. I said pregame I thought Gavin Schilling was going to play a lot, but they actually put in a lot of Xavier Tillman, and Tillman played probably the best out of any Spartan today, and once again against Michigan, and we talked about that the last game against Michigan. Jaren Jackson and Xavier Tillman were the 2 guys that looked like they knew what they were doing out there. So this Michigan team, I think, is just a very, very bad matchup for these Spartans. I don't know what it is, but they just, I mean, a lot of people are saying John Beilein outcoached Tom Izzo, and I mean, you could definitely make an argument for that because X's and O's wise, Michigan looked more prepared today and in the last matchup against Michigan State.
And that's the key thing that I think here, because a lot of people are on Twitter saying, oh, Izzo gets outcoached every time he coaches or he plays against Michigan. Well, not every time, but I would tend to agree with that in the sense of this season, because when Michigan came into East Lansing, their offensive sets were better, plain and simple. And today in New York City at Madison Square Garden, big stage, Big Apple, Big Ten, Michigan was the better team, plain and simple. And Nick Ward only played 10 minutes. So the freshmen of Jaren Jackson Jr. and Xavier Tillman, they had some impact minutes, especially Xavier Tillman off the bench for the Spartans. Moving on to talk about Miles Bridges. First half, not great for him, but he was pretty much all the Spartans had going late in the going. First half was very, very tentative to attack the rim, had to settle for jumpers and 3-pointers, and he said after the game, you know, those weren't working for me in the first half, so I had to get a little bit more aggressive, change my game in the second half, but it was just a little bit too little too late.
It really was, and I think what Tom Izzo did actually is he moved Bridges back to that 4 where he was last season, Jaren Jackson at the 5, and that's when Bridges was taking those post-ups. I mean, we have not seen that when he's out there with a guy like Jackson and Ward. There's not enough room for Bridges to post up. When he does post up, I mean, he had some creative moves out there. I think going into the NCAA tournament, I mean, first off, you need to be playing your best, but I don't think Tom Izzo has played Miles Bridges enough at the 4 this season. Yes, he's smaller and he's going to play the 3 in the NBA, but for this team right now, he's better suited as a 4.
And I don't even think Miles Bridges has played enough at the 4 to know when to get aggressive, how to get aggressive, play defenses in that thing. I mean, it's different when you're playing at the 4, especially on a big stage like this, with different people around you, than when you're playing at the 3, like he did pretty much for all of the regular season.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he, like we said, got aggressive down low, and that's what, you know, gave Michigan State a chance in that second half before some really big shots by Michigan, and there was a missed layup by Nick Ward that really could have cut it down to, I think, 3, and then the 3-pointer by Muhammad Ali Abdur-Rahman,
Which is a 35-foot prayer.
And bounced off the back of the rim and rolled in.
When that happens, you know it's not your day.
No, absolutely. That made it 62-54, and that really took the wind out of the sails for Michigan State. So credit Michigan, though. I mean, you can talk all about excuses for Michigan State. Michigan was flat out better, especially in the second half today.
Absolutely, and now their winning streak, which came into this game at 7, is now 8, and Michigan State's Division I record at the time, 13-game winning streak, is now no more. Heading into the NCAA tournament, Michigan State's going to have a long layoff. They're not going to know until next Sunday, so what is that, 8 days? Until for 8 days until where they're going to be, whether it be Detroit, whether it be Pittsburgh, what seed they're going to get. We don't know that yet, and that's something that Tom Izzo has not really experienced in over his 20 years of coaching at Michigan State. So I'm going to be interested to see how the players kind of respond to a lot of this downtime, especially coming off of a loss to an in-state rival, and you're not even going to be able to play in the Big Ten tournament, the second year in a row that the Spartans have not been able to do so.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And on the court, I mean, they're not going to be back out on a court playing against another team for 12, maybe even 13 days.
Right.
And they're going to have that rivalry loss in their head, I'm sure. A lot to work on, and I think that it's going to humble them a little bit. We kind of talked about maybe on a podcast this past week or so. Does this team remember what it's like to lose? Because they've been winning so many close games, 13 straight wins since the Michigan loss. And you kind of wonder, is this kind of a loss going to propel them forward and kind of check off the boxes of, all right, here's what we got done, but here's what we need to work on? Or is it going to bring them down a bit and, woe is me? So I like to think it's the former because of the mentality and the maturity of this team. Even though they're young, they seem to have their minds set the right way. But man, I mean, this loss, and when you look at these two losses to Michigan, I think they open up a blueprint for teams in March to see what it's like to beat Michigan State.
This just shows that Michigan State is not invincible.
No.
I said it on a couple podcasts ago that something in my gut just told me that this team was not one of the 5 best in the nation, and it's things like this when you just don't make shots. You beat yourself. You can't contain Mo Wagner inside, and when a Muhammad Ali Abdul-Rahman 35-footer goes in, sometimes it's just not your day. So Ryan, wrapping up here from Madison Square Garden in New York, final thoughts on today's defeat of Michigan State by Michigan.
Well, a rivalry loss is never acceptable for Tom Izzo, for these players, and
Moreover, 2 in 1 season.
Exactly, and I think it's going to sting them, especially these sophomores that are now 1-3 against the Wolverines, have lost 3 straight in that rivalry. And I mean, you know it obviously by coming in, but I mean, I grew up in the state and have seen this rivalry, and this is not what is a reasonable expectation for Michigan State. I mean, you are expected to come in and beat Michigan. And Michigan, these last 3 games against the Spartans, going back to last season in Ann Arbor, they have not only been a better team, but have seemed to want it more. And that's something that I think is a struggle. And I mean, we're talking about what this Spartan team can do in March going forward. You got to look at their tenacity in a regular season game like this and the toughness kind of faltering down the stretch. And that, I think, could be a bother playing in those Sweet 16 Elite 8 games against some of the top teams in the country.
You got to get there first. And obviously, Michigan State most likely will not be a 1 seed come NCAA tournament time with the loss today against Michigan. But if they have any aspirations of not only winning a national championship, first you got to get to Final Four. First you got to get to an Elite 8. First you got to get to a Sweet 16. And right now, the way that this team has been exposed and all the loopholes, none of that is a foregone conclusion yet. So we will be back here tomorrow to watch the Big Ten championship between the Purdue Boilermakers and the Michigan Wolverines. But until then, for Ryan Cole, I'm Davey Segal signing off from Madison Square Garden.